second lecture on neutrinos in physics, astrophysics, and cosmology.
Okay, thank you. So good morning, everyone. So in this second lecture, I'm going to discuss the general aspects of neutrino oscillations in vacuum and in matter. I'm going to discuss the formalism, some of the details, and then I will discuss about the details of the experiments tomorrow in the session of the three neutrino phenomenology. Okay, so let's start. So, sorry, there is a delay. It is not updating. It is not updating the, I don't know if there is a delay. Today EduRAM was working not that good for me in the office. So I don't know if this could be the problem. I'm going to share again. Okay, so I think maybe it's EduRAM that doesn't work that well. So I really don't know how, you see, it's not updating the slides. Yeah. Okay, while Eligio is coming, so Jan, the idea is that today, we know we have evidence that neutrinos oscillate, okay? And then I'm going to present this formalism. I like also to do like a historical perspective to put you in context, because most of you don't work in neutrinos, just to know what was done before. So then the idea is that, the point is that this idea of neutrino oscillations was first suggested in 1957 by the Italian physicist Bruno Pontecorvo. I have the references in the slides. Hopefully, I can show you. In any case, I will share the slides. Okay, so Bruno Pontecorvo, in 1957, you remember, yesterday we saw that the electron neutrino was discovered in 1956, so just 1 year before. And then, by then, there was only one flavor of neutrino known, the electron neutrino. Indeed, the electron antineutrino, because in the reactors, the particle that it was discovered was the electron antineutrino. Okay, but then Bruno Pontecorvo was his proposal was motivated by the suggestion that a system of particles, the kaons, K0 and K0 bar. You see, by then, by the end of the 50s, there was this puzzle of the kaon system in which there was some, yeah, I don't know if it's EduRAM, because in the office, EduRAM was not working very good. Because here you see, I'm just switching, but it's not updating there. It's not updating, yeah. No, not this one. It was, okay, but there is the other. No, no, sorry. Well, so this thing, okay. But it's not that one. It's not this file, no. But it should be there, the other file, right? Maybe I'm doing the wrong thing. So if you go to the keynote, is that one, the slides, yes. So maybe I was doing, okay. It's not EduRAM, it was me. Okay, yes, okay, thanks a lot. Okay, let's see if it works. It was my fault, it was not EduRAM, I'm sorry. Okay, so I was telling that the idea of the neutrino oscillations was suggested by Pontecorvo, and then by then there was only one flavor, the electron neutrino, indeed, antineutrino. But then there was some discussion, because there was this system of kaons, K0 and K0 bar. There are two mesons with strangeness equal to +1 and strangeness equal to -1. And then there was some puzzling results in this system, and then somebody suggested that perhaps there was some oscillation between the two particles, because strangeness is conserved in strong interactions, but not in weak interactions. So then there was this proposal that perhaps they were oscillating from the particle to the antiparticle, and then based on that, Pontecorvo thought, okay, maybe there is also this oscillation between neutrino and antineutrino, like with the kaon and anti-kaon. Then he suggested this possibility, one could oscillate to the other one. Also, this proposal was motivated by the fact that by this time, Pontecorvo had suggested the possibility to detect neutrinos using the radiochemical technique. The radiochemical technique, I will discuss later as well. The idea is to detect electroneutrinos on chlorine. You discussed it yesterday with Christoph, with the Davis experiment, okay? So he proposed this process in order to detect the neutrinos, okay? And this idea, this radiochemical process, was being implemented by Raymond Davis to detect reactor neutrinos. But as you learned yesterday, this process cannot work with reactor antineutrinos, only with electron neutrinos. Antineutrinos are antineutrinos, okay? Reactor are antineutrinos. And then Pontecorvo had the rumor, he heard the rumor that this idea was not working within the experiment of Davis using the radiochemical technique. So perhaps he was thinking that maybe the neutrino oscillations were disappearing. So these were their motivations. So there are these two motivations. First, the proposal of oscillations in the kaon system, particle and the particle, and then a result that was not really understood. And then he thought that perhaps what was going on was that neutrinos were oscillating to antineutrinos, okay? Then later on, in 1962, these other people, Maki, Nakagawa, and Sakata, they were studying the theory of a unified model of elementary particles, and then within this model, they proposed that perhaps there could be a couple of neutrinos. You see, by then, already the muon neutrino had been discovered. So then we had already in that two neutrinos, nu e and nu mu. And then they proposed in this unified theory of elementary particles that perhaps, in addition of the states with definite flavor, with definite interactions under the flavor Lagrangian, there could be other neutrinos with different labels with definite mass. This would be the neutrinos with definite flavor, and this with definite mass. And then in their paper, you have the reference there, they differentiate between weak neutrinos and true neutrinos. So this is the first paper where there is a proposal that perhaps there are two different bases of eigenstates of different observable, ones with a defined flavor, another with defined mass. And then, as you know, this is very basic quantum mechanical process, there is a mixing, there is a rotation between the two bases. Okay, this idea was proposed in that paper. Okay, later on, Gribov and Pontecorvo, already with the idea of the oscillations between muon neutrinos and electron neutrinos, they actually calculated the oscillation probability between these two neutrinos, mu mu. And then they got the formula that we will see later. They indeed calculated the oscillation probability for the disappearance. So the survival probability of electron neutrinos going to electron neutrinos would be 1 minus 1 over 2 sinus square 2 theta, 1 minus cosinus delta m square L over 2e. So this is the first time that the oscillation probability between two families of neutrinos was calculated. So here, this theta is the rotation angle, what we call also the mixing angle that relates the two different eigenstate bases. Okay, the rotation that allows you to go from one basis to the other. And then this delta m square is the difference between the square masses of the two true neutrinos, with defined mass. Okay, so then already in 1969, it was calculated this probability between two neutrinos because by then only nu and nu mu were known. Okay, good. So then this was more or less the status of the theory, what was going on, but then we moved to the, again it's not working. So I don't know, maybe it was, thanks a lot. Yeah, because now it's directly connected to my computer. So now Zoom is not there. Thanks a lot. Okay, so then, as I was telling you, the idea was to use this radiochemical technique where having a big tank of chlorine, they were using this 600 tons of this this element with chlorine. The idea was the chlorine was capturing the electron neutrinos from the sun, and then it was produced this radiochemical process that it was converted to argon and to electron. This argon was unstable, and then the argon, after some time, was decaying inside the tank. And then the idea is just to count all the nuclei of argon that decays inside the tank. Then it was a counting experiment. You were counting all the decays of argon in the tank, and then you could infer the number of electron neutrinos that arrived to the tank. Okay, as I was telling you, first Davis tried to put this tank, to use this technique to detect reactor neutrinos. It didn't work because reactors are antineutrinos. But then, he put this tank in an underground experiment in the Homestake gold mine in South Dakota. And the idea was she was trying to measure electron antineutrinos, okay? And then the results they got were very puzzling because already by then there was a model of the sun, what is called the standard solar model, that based on theory models and on the different processes that happen inside of the sun, you can compute the number of neutrinos that are expected to be emitted by the sun. Not only the number, we will see later a plot, but also the energy spectrum of those neutrinos produced at the different processes in the sun. So using this standard solar model, you could do an estimation of the number of neutrinos you expect to measure at Earth, that it was this yellow band. Sorry, this other band, the band with colors. There are different colors because, as we will see later, the spectrum of solar neutrinos comes from different reactions, where neutrinos and other particles interact with boron, with carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and usually these different parts of the solar neutrino spectrum get the label. We talk about the boron neutrinos, that are neutrinos that are produced in a process with boron, and they have a specific energy. They are the highest energy neutrinos. Then there are the beryllium neutrinos that are produced in another process. They are monoenergetic, so they have different parts of neutrinos in the spectrum. And then you could evaluate, theoretically, how many of those neutrinos you expect to measure in your detector. So the people from the experiment made this estimation, and they got that they should observe all this fraction of neutrinos. The units is some solar neutrino units based on number of neutrinos per unit of surface and per unit of time, but okay, we don't care. We care only of the ratio between the predicted number of neutrinos and the expected, and the measured. So this is the predicted according to the standard solar model, and this is the number of neutrinos that were measured. So you see that only 30% of the number of neutrinos expected from the standard solar model were detected in the Davis experiment. Okay, afterwards, in 2002, Raymond Davis got the Nobel Prize in Physics for his pioneering works in the detection of solar neutrinos. Okay, so then there is this thing of the experiment of Davis where they got this 30% of neutrinos, but by then you see the standard solar model was still in the first period, so still people were thinking that perhaps it was not that precise as one could expect. Also, there was the possibility that there were some mistakes, some uncertainties, some systematic errors in the experiment. So, but as you see, the idea was there that not enough solar neutrinos were detected. However, as the experimental progress was advancing, then there were some other experiments, okay? So for instance, GALEX, GNO, and SAGE. GALEX, GNO were happening here in Italy, in the Gran Sasso Laboratory, SAGE in Russia. This experiment Galio, they were using a radiochemical technique similar to the one used by Raymond Davis, but using gallium instead of chlorine. Okay, so again, in this gallium experiment, you can see the predicted number of neutrinos coming from the different processes, this bar over here, and what was measured in the experiment. So again, not all neutrinos are measured, but this time is 50% of the neutrinos, of the predicted neutrinos, what are measured. Okay, later on there were more precise experiments. This chlorine and gallium, as I told you, they are counting experiments, so you cannot get an information on the energy of the neutrino that hit the detector or the time of arrival of the neutrino to the detector, because they are counting. You just, after some time, you take your detector and you count. But with these Water-Cherenkov experiments, using this process of neutrino electron scattering, those are real-time detectors, because then you can know the exact time arrival of the neutrino to the detector, and you can also infer the energy of the incoming neutrino from the energy of the electron. Okay, so these are very big step forward in the progress of experiments. And in that case, again, this was the fraction of neutrinos expected according to the Standard Solar Model, and this was the fraction measured. So in that case, it was 40% of neutrinos, okay? So you see that the situation was rather challenging, but it seems it was very unlikely that it comes from a problem in the Standard Solar Model, because all the experiments were observing the same deficit. And yeah, and the situation was going on, okay? And then this is what it was called for many years the solar neutrino problem. Okay, we will go later on how it was resolved. So we stop here about the solar neutrino problem, and then we're going to see another anomaly that was happening in the neutrino sector. Okay, the another anomaly has to do with atmospheric neutrinos. Atmospheric neutrinos are the neutrinos produced in the atmosphere after from the collision of cosmic rays with the nuclei in the atmosphere. Then pions are produced, pions decay to muons that decay to neutrinos. Okay, so those neutrinos here are what we call atmospheric neutrinos. Okay, so these neutrinos come from all the, we can get neutrinos in a detector from over 360 degrees, okay? And then the idea is that you can detect these neutrinos in an experiment like the one with the Water-Cherenkov or a water tank, searching for the interaction of electron neutrinos or muon neutrinos with the nuclei in the tank. Okay, so with this process, are produced an electron or a muon, depending on the flavor of the neutrino, and then you can identify in the detector if there is an electron produced or if there is a muon produced. Then you can infer that a neutrino arrives and also the flavor of the neutrino. Okay, so the interesting thing about atmospheric neutrino experiments is that people was not looking for neutrinos, atmospheric neutrinos. Indeed, there were some experiments that were looking for proton decay searches, okay? And the thing is that in these experiments looking for proton decay searches, there was a background, very important background, that they were the atmospheric neutrinos. So atmospheric neutrinos were studied in the first place because they were a background for these proton decay experiments, okay? And then in that case, there were for instance, these three experiments, Kamiokande in Japan, IMB in USA, Offrejuste in France, and then the detection process was, as we have seen before, so trying to look for muon neutrinos interacting with the nucleons in the detector, producing a muon and a nucleon, and then this muon was detected. Okay, so then already in the 80s, in 1985, there was some indications that also a problematic thing was happening with atmospheric neutrinos. Why? Because if you see these processes that I told you is the processes that produce the atmospheric neutrinos, then you can see that, for instance, for a pion, you can get pion minus, you get 2 muon neutrinos, 1 electron neutrino. And the same here. You get always double number of muon neutrinos than electron neutrinos, okay? So in principle, if you compute this ratio between number of neutrinos with flavor mu and number of neutrinos with flavor E, you expect 2. But then as these experiments, so this here, this plot represents this ratio, the experimental ratio, over the predicted ratio. The predicted ratio was 2, the theoretical ratio was 2, but the thing is that the expected region was, for some of the experiments, below 2. So this is the ratio below 1. The ratio below 1 means that the measured numbers of the ratio was smaller than 2. Okay, and this was it was not possible to understand. Some muon neutrinos were disappearing, were really disappearing. Okay, but then this evidence was even got a stronger impact when the Kamiokande experiment in Japan found that there was this deficit. There were less muon neutrinos than expected, but also this deficit depended on the distance traveled by the neutrinos. Okay, how we know the distance traveled by the neutrinos? So the detector can identify the arrival direction of the neutrinos. So if one neutrino arrives from the top of the detector, it has traveled a few kilometers, okay, from the atmosphere to the detector. But if it comes from below, it has traveled the whole Earth. So then it has traveled more than 10,000 kilometers. And then they found that this deficit was depending on the arrival angle and then on the distance traveled by the neutrinos. So there in this plot, you have, for instance, the electron neutrinos. So the points are the experimental results, and the lines are the predictions. In the case of electron neutrinos, it is these black dots. The black dots are more or less in agreement with the dotted line that is the prediction. So more or less, all the electron neutrinos produced in the atmosphere were detected. However, if you were looking for the muon-like neutrinos, the white dots, then it was not, this is not the simulation. This is the prediction for the oscillation hypothesis. But if nothing was happening, you were expecting also 1. So you should expect 1 and 1. Is that clear? But for muon neutrinos, it was not 1. So once you consider neutrinos traveling longer distances, neutrinos coming from below, from the other side of the Earth, these neutrinos were disappearing. These muon neutrinos were not all of them arriving to the Earth. And this is what it was called the atmospheric neutrino anomaly. So as you can see, this anomaly started to be known after the solar neutrino anomaly. So the other one stands already from the 60s. This was known in the 80s, but it was solved before. Because in 1988, there was an extension of the Kamiokande experiment. Okay, it's an experiment we will see in more detail tomorrow when we will discuss about the details of the experiments. The Super Kamiokande experiment is a big tank, okay, in Japan under the laboratory in Kamioka that uses 50 kilotons of pure water to detect neutrinos. So in 1988, the results of the Super Kamiokande experiment were good enough in order to see that this disappearance, the deficit of neutrinos, depending on the arrival direction of the neutrino to the detector. So this is cos theta is the angle of arrival. And you see here, these bands are the predictions for the muon neutrinos, and these dots are the experimental points. So then in 1988, they collected enough statistics to be sure that what was going on with the atmospheric neutrino flux is that the muon neutrinos coming from the other side of the Earth were oscillating to a different flavor, and this is why they were not arriving to the detector as muon neutrinos. Then you would expect the muon neutrinos, but they had converted to another flavor, and the other flavor, which could be? I mean, it could go to nu E or nu tau. But the nu E were fine with the predictions, right? So the oscillation channel was nu mu to nu tau, okay? Because then all the news were okay, but since you were not looking for the nu taus, that is harder to observe, then these neutrinos were going to nu tau. So later on in 2016, these results, they got much more statistics, and then they could see very, very clear signal of the measurements over the predictions, okay? So with this experimental result, it was confirmed that there was an oscillation. Okay, there was an oscillation that depending on the distance traveled by the neutrinos and in the channel nu mu to nu tau, okay? And the most important point is that this evidence of these oscillations were due to a conversion that it was a consequence of neutrinos having a mass. So this is the first evidence for non-zero neutrino masses. And so far, the strongest evidence for the need of physics beyond the standard model. Okay? And for this result, Professor Takaki Kajita got a Nobel Prize in Physics in 2015. Okay, so the atmospheric neutrino anomaly, it was solved. So the results, the anomaly results, were finally explained due to an oscillation between nu mu and nu tau that was essentially following this kind of probability. Sorry. So essentially, was the results. Of course, the results are more complicated to explain because, as we will see, there are matter effects involved. There are other mixing angles, but at first approximation, it could be explained with this formula. So with this formula for neutron oscillations, you can explain Super Kamiokande data, and then this means that neutrinos have a mass. Okay? So then we go back to the solar neutrino anomaly. If you remember, we had that there were some experiments that were not able to measure all the neutrinos predicted by the standard solar model. Okay, this thing was solved with the arrival of the Sudbury neutrino experiment. So just let me remove this, close my email. Okay. With the arrival of the Sudbury neutrino experiment. The new thing of this experiment is that before, when we have seen the standard solar, the solar neutrino problem, we saw here, for instance, the chlorine experiments are sensitive to electron neutrinos because of this radiochemical technique. The gallium are sensitive to electron neutrinos, and the Water-Cherenkov detectors that measure the neutrinos with this neutrino elastic scattering process are sensitive to nu e and also nu mu and nu tau, because in that process, okay, if you consider nu e, this process gets contributions from charge current plus neutral current. Okay? If you consider the other flavor, nu x electron, nu x electron, in that case, this process only gets contribution from the neutral currents. So you can see that the sensitivity of these Water-Cherenkov experiments is not the same for all the flavors of neutrinos. So they are mostly sensitive to electron neutrinos, not so much sensitive to nu mu and nu tau. And this was what was addressed by the SNO experiment, because in the SNO experiment, they used 3 different detection techniques. They used the same as in the Water-Cherenkov. So SNO used, instead of water, they use heavy water. And the idea to use heavy water is that you have, oops, what happened there? Sorry. Okay, so then the idea is that you have heavy water, and then you open the possibility to new detection processes, because you have the elastic scattering, you have electrons, you can have this process, as in Super Kamiokande, that is mostly sensitive to electron neutrinos, with some sensitivity to nu mu and nu tau. But there are some other processes, for instance, with deuterium, with the deuterium in the heavy water. So then with this deuterium, you can have charged currents that are only sensitive to electron neutrinos. This process only happens with electron neutrinos. And you have also neutral currents, because you have this process of neutrinos of every flavor with deuterium, and here the sensitivity is the same for all the flavors. It's purely neutral current. Okay, so this experiment combined the 3 different techniques. They got a measurement for a charge current in red, for SNO neutral current in blue, and for elastic scattering. Here you have these bands in the plane of the flux of electron neutrinos and the flux of nu mu and nu tau. And then the combination of the 3 detection channels allows to measure very well the contribution, the flux of electron neutrinos and the flux of mu and eta neutrinos, that it was not that possible in the other experiment. And what was found is that measuring, doing the ratio between the charge current flux and the neutral current flux, then you got a measurement of the electron flux, okay? And then the electron flux coming from the sun was around 0.3, okay? I can put the result, 0.301 plus minus 0.039. Okay, so this was a measurement of all the electron neutrinos coming from the sun, okay? Only 1/3 of the neutrinos produced in the sun were arriving to the Earth. And the other result that was very nice was through the neutral current measurement, it was clear that it was more or less, it was compatible with the number of neutrinos produced in the sun for these neutrino energies. So then the thing is that what was going on? If you were measuring only electron neutrinos, 1/3 of the produced at the Earth were there. Fine. This was in agreement with the solar neutrino problem, that less neutrinos were detected. But once you had the possibility to look to all the neutrinos with the same sensitivity, 100% of the neutrinos predicted by the standard solar model were detected. Okay, here there was sensitivity to nu e, nu mu, plus nu tau. So this was the evidence that the standard model was fine, okay, and that something was going on with electron neutrinos produced at the sun that in their way from the sun to the Earth were converting to nu mu and nu tau. Okay? The only thing is that in the case of Super Kamiokande, it was clear that the mechanism for the conversion between nu mu and nu tau was oscillations due to neutrino mass. In the case of SNO, it was not clear. There were other conversion mechanisms that could also explain this conversion from nu e through nu mu and nu tau. Okay? Okay, so for this very important result of the SNO experiment, the spokesperson of the experiment, Professor Art McDonald, got together with Kajita the Nobel Prize in Physics in 2015. So we go back to the solar neutrino problem and there is no problem. You can see this slide. So I have added to what we had before, I have added these two bands. In the experiment in the SNO with heavy water, if you look only for electron neutrinos, you find 1/3, okay? But if you use the neutral current process, where you look for all the flavors, all of them are there. So there was no problem, it was solved, okay? With using this conversion. Okay, so other results that were important for the solution of the anomalies was, for instance, CAMLAT. I will discuss in more detail tomorrow. It was a reactor experiment that was able to confirm that what was going on with solar neutrinos were also oscillations due to the mass. With SNO, it was not possible to know which was the mechanism behind this process. But with the CAMLAT experiment, a reactor experiment, it was possible to know that what was going on here was the same as with atmospheric neutrinos, and you could explain the results with this formula, okay? Then there were observations of oscillations with accelerator experiments, we will discuss tomorrow, and also in reactor experiments, okay? And by now, neutrino oscillations have been observed in solar, atmospheric, reactor, and accelerator experiments. But then we will go back to these experimental details tomorrow, okay? Okay. So let me just see this thing, and then we perhaps start a little bit and then stop. What we saw yesterday is that in the standard model, we have this thing, usually flavors do not mix. So you can produce an electron neutrino together with an electron, and then when you go to the detector, this electron neutrino produces an electron. And the same for a muon. But what was not happening in the standard model is starting with an electron here and getting a muon there. This is not happening in the standard model. However, we have seen with these anomalies that really there was a change of the flavors. What was going on? The thing is very easy to explain because it is very basic quantum mechanics. As we discussed before in the context of the Maki Nakagawa-Sakata proposal, if we consider that neutrinos may have a mass, okay, we will have, let's say, two observables. So one observable will be the flavor, and then we will have neutrinos having defined flavor, defined properties under the weak interactions that we call nu alpha with alpha, e, mu, and tau. If now we know that neutrinos have a mass, in principle, the states that have definite mass are not coincident with the other ones. So you might have these eigenstates of mass, okay, with M1, 2, 3. Then we'll have these two bases of eigenstates, and in general, they will not be same, but they will be related with some mixing matrix. Okay, that it is a rotation matrix. Now I'm written in these general terms, but it's the same idea that proposed this Maki, Nakagawa, and Sakata. Then, what's going on here? So here we saw that in the standard model, this could not be expected. But let's go into the details. I can produce an electron neutrino. But this electron neutrino, okay, this electron neutrino is a combination of different eigenstates with definite mass, this nu k, okay? And then the states with definite mass are the eigenstates of the Hamiltonian, are the eigenstates that I know how to propagate with the Schrodinger equation. Okay, so then the idea is with this nu e, you can decompose it in the different components. Then every component, nu e, nu2, and nu3, they have a different mass. So they have a different velocity, let's say, to propagate. And then afterwards, when they arrive to the detector, then they are projected again to the flavor basis. And then perhaps you will get nu e, but perhaps you will get nu mu or nu tau. Okay, and then with this oscillation, you can get really the muon over there. It is clear? Okay. So just a few slides and we stop. So you have seen, no, you have not seen it at the end. At the end, you didn't do the exercise of the mixing matrix yesterday. So let me just, I thought I have it. No, I have it here. Okay. So this mixing matrix, okay, is a rotation matrix that depends on several parameters. One of the exercises that Christoph gave you in the tutorials was to evaluate the number of mixing angles and phases in the matrix. So I don't know if anyone tried to do that. And you got some result or? Sorry? In the hour. Okay, yeah, that's correct. So then the idea is that this matrix is a n times n complex matrix, okay? So then this means it has n squared, 2n squared parameters. So I'm going just to do very briefly the parameter counting. But it is a unitary matrix. Since it is a unitary matrix, I have n squared conditions that can help me to fix the parameters. So at the end, I may have n squared real parameters. Okay. Then from those n squared, if you want, usually it is parameters in terms of mixing angles that are essentially rotations between two planes, between two eigenstates. So then the idea is how many mixing angles. So you can consider it's a combinatories of n elements taking the 2 by 2, okay? Then if you do this result, you have is n factorial, 2 factorial, n minus 2, and this is n plus 1 over 2. This is the number of mixing angles. Okay, then if I have in total n squared parameters, so the rest of the parameters will not be mixing angles, and then there will be phases. So with a mixing matrix that is n times n, I will have n minus 1 over 2 mixing angles that we can denote with this theta ij, and the remaining parameters will be the phases, will be n plus 1 over 2 phases. But as we will see in a while, not all these phases are physical, okay? And we will see how to remove. So maybe we stop here, 5 minutes? Okay, and then we will continue. If it is not clear, we can discuss maybe or later, okay?
Tuvimos estos, o sea, porque dijimos que estos son los mixing
Claro, porque tú los mixing angle, cuando tienes una matriz de rotación, haces una rotación entre dos planos. Una rotación entre. Entonces, como tenemos n, es una matriz de dimensión 3, tú dices, pues yo si mi interpretación de los mixing angles es English, right?
No, español.
Española también. ¿Eres de México también?
Sí.
Ah, vale. Entonces, si la interpretación es eso, que los mixing angles son ángulos de rotación entre diferentes planos, tengo 3 dimensiones, pues tendré n elementos tomados de 2 en 2, ¿vale? English. So I will have, for the mixing angles, as the rotation angles, I will have, if I have n dimensions, okay, n planes, for instance, and I have to rotate from one to the other, so I need to take these n elements taken 2 by 2. So I will have the mixing angle 1, 2, the mixing angle 1, 3, and the mixing angle 2, 3. So then you can do it just in general way with these combinatorics. And then you will have this n minus 1 over 2. Is plus or is minus? Minus. No, no, there is minus, sorry. There is plus. Here it is.
Okay, and what's the difference between the phase and the mixing?
All the other parameters. You need in total n square. So then what it is somehow defined is what we understand by mixing angles, but it's the rotations. Then all the other parameters, we call these phases, and then we have it there. So let me check. Is n minus 1? Yes. 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 And here is plus. Sorry. Yes. It's menos. Yes, yes, yes. So this is minus. This is minus, and this is minus. Yes.
Yeah, they should be different.
Minus 1 angles plus 1 phase.
Yes, minus. Yeah.
So
Okay.
that one minus. Yeah,
Yes,
so
minus,
this is
yes.
The phases, these are the,
Yeah, and then the thing is you go to 2 neutrinos that it was having here. So in 2 neutrinos is n equal to, so you will have only one mixing angle because you will have 2, 2, 1, one mixing angle,
Okay.
and 0 phases.
So this is, for example, for the electron and mu neutrino.
Yes, with 2 families, only 2 families. And here you will have, no, because then still we need to remove the unphysical.
Yeah.
Here we cannot do the counting because I still need to explain you, because all these phases are not physical.
Okay.
We will see that in the Lagrangian, you can remove, you can reabsorb some of the phases. So this is the general, and then we will see how to remove. And depending if neutrinos are Dirac or Majorana, you can remove one number of
So
phases.
are the phases kind of like gauge transformations, or because they're not physical?
Yes, you can reabsorb in the phases of the fields. Yeah, I will explain that.
Regarding these two, so basically yesterday you were telling
Yes.
me that these mass neutrinos are
Yes.
basically like rewriting this in a different basis.
It's a different basis. I mean, you can, as quantum
So,
mechanical
but-
basics,
yeah.
you have 2 observables
But
with
it's
2.
not like these are the more fundamental
No,
neutrinos than the others.
no. I mean, you have one observable, that is the mass.
Yeah.
So for the mass, the states that have definite mass are the nu m. But
Correct.
if you need to,
And you only measure the difference between
yes,
the masses.
yes.
Okay.
Because we will see in the formula, you saw in the formula yesterday.
Yeah.
I will go fast
So
on that.
it's kind of similar, like I was reading yesterday about the standard model.
Yes.
And basically in the Lagrangian for all the SU3 and SU2, you have these gauge bosons, which are the W's whatever, and that. But then you rewrite these W bosons and
With
also to create the set
The
boson
set and
gluon.
in the photon, you have this mixing, yes.
Yeah, so it's
yes.
kind of like
Same
similar to
idea,
that.
same idea.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think it's starting to get more clear because yesterday I was very, very much confused.
Okay.
But
Because you told me which is your topic of.
it's more like GR.
Okay.
So
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, more gravitation and I mean lately I joined like a fast particle physics group, but I'm not doing particle physics.
Okay. And you are in Mexico or you are abroad as well? ¿Dónde estás? Ah, pero ¿dónde estás? En UNAM, en astronomía. Vale, vale, vale. Entonces haces la tesis en astronomía.
Sí, es machine learning aplicado a cosmología observacional.
Vale, muy bien. Vale, voy a borrar aquí.
Sí, no, ya esto me ayudó muchísimo y ya lo que me ayudaste, lo que me dijiste ayer, y también ponerme a leer la derivación del modelo estándar, porque pues a mí me dicen así como S3, S2, que es como hasta que veo las simetrías y veo los generadores así como explícitamente, ya entiendo de qué estamos hablando.
Para todo eso, el SU3 no importa.
Sí, porque S3 entiendo que son los quarks, ¿no? Y hypercharge que es...
Bueno, la hypercharge era
Y también me ayuda como a entender un poco más esto de que estar reescribiendo.
Yes.
So here we are introducing the problem with this rotation matrix of the flavors. I was thinking, if we want to recover it from a theory side,
Okay.
like yesterday we were mentioning the Weinberg operator.
Okay.
And there I understood that like we have two leptons and two peaks.
Yes.
And then except some coupling.
Yes.
And two leptons in the flavor space. That's a matrix like that. And I think this has to be symmetric
Okay.
in IJ. So here I did like some degree of freedom, some in this parameter, I think. And then this is related to the same degree of freedom.
Because the thing is that with this, you will build the neutrino mass.
Okay,
So then you will get the M1, the M1 and 2, and then you will have sensitivity through the, once you consider the neutrino oscillation formula, here is sensitive to the delta M square.
Okay.
So then you can, with this, you can build the different masses, and then the oscillation experiments are sensitive to the difference of the masses, of the square of the masses. Okay?
Okay.
So then, yes.
Somehow it's like here it's we are not imposing a model. This is
No,
like
no, this is
imposing
phenomenological. The
this
thing
is
is,
simply phenomenological
yes.
in that way that I'm imposing that it comes
Yes.
that way, but it could be another operator.
Then you have this
another
operator,
mechanism.
and then in order to your operator would be valid, you need to check if the delta M square that will produce this model is in agreement with the measurement of the delta M. But there is nothing, no model or masses behind. Just we assume M1, M2, M3, whatever they are, and then once you build a model, you need to check that your model recovers the values of the delta M square, the values of the mixing angle, because in your model, you will have also, you will be able to predict the neutrino mass eigenstate, the flavor, and then you will be able to predict some values of the mixing angles. Then you need to check if these values of the mixing angles are in agreement with experiments. Yes, this is what is done all the
But
time.
so this is like the other, it's like bottom up, we can say.
Yes.
That from experiments, we try to be the most general.
Yes, and then if you have a model, then you need to check.
Yeah, we check
But
if
but
we
in the
agree.
experiments, there is no assumption about the model. Okay, welcome. Okay, so we were saying that from just the parameter counting, we have that a mixing matrix, n times n, has this number of parameters. A number of mixing angles, and the rest are phases. Okay, so by tomorrow, for the slide, you know that we have changed the lectures. So my next, my lecture that was supposed to be on Thursday will be on Friday. So for Friday, I will discuss also the mixing parameters once we assume a non-unitary matrix. So you can do the counting, and then you can tell me on Friday the number of parameters I need to parameterize a n times n mixing matrix that is not unitary. So then you will tell me on Friday, okay? But let's go back to the unitary thing. So I was saying that these are mixing angles and these are phases, but not all phases are physical. Why I'm saying that? Not all phases are observable. Because here, we need to remind that what we are sensitive in our Lagrangian is the leptonic charge current. If you remember, in the lecture yesterday, we were defining the leptonic charge current, that it has this form. Okay. Summing over all the flavor indices. And then I have the field for the charged leptons and the field for the neutrino. This is the leptonic current. Here I'm already including the thing that only the left-handed fields participate in the weak interaction. Okay, now we have seen that if neutrinos have a mass, these neutrinos, these flavor neutrinos, would be a combination of the neutrinos with a definite mass. So then I can write this as introducing the mixing matrix. There will be no space. Okay, let me just squeeze it a little bit so you can see it. Okay, I have introduced the mixing matrix in this week current, and then I have introduced here the mass eigenstates. And this is the mixing matrix with the parameters I have described before. So this mixing matrix has some faces, has in general n plus 1 over 2 faces, okay? So then, are all the phases physical? So we can think that the weak Lagrangian should be invariant under global phase transformations. So if I go to a transformation of the fields, I transform the field of the charge lepton adding a total phase, okay? And I do the same for the neutrino field. Then my Lagrangian should be invariant under this phase transformation. Okay, let's see how the charge current, how the weak current will transform if I do this global phase transformation. So then I will have that the current will transform to then I can rearrange a little bit the phases over here. Okay, I have taken the vector current and I have done these global phase transformations of the fields, of the charge current fields and the neutrino fields. Okay, so I'm introducing n phases here and n phases there. But I have to take in mind that the full Lagrangian, I cannot fix all the phases because the Lagrangian should still be invariant under the global phase transformation. So I can give the freedom to rephase all the Lagrangian with a phase, but then I can consider that here I can reaggregate, I will have here the n phases from the charged sector, and here I will have the n-1 phases from the neutrinos, and these phases there, with these phases, I can reabsorb some of the phases of the mixing matrix, okay? Some of the phases here, I can fix them in order to be absorbed in the redefinition of the fields. So this means that in this Lagrangian, there is a total of 2 n-1 phases that will not be observable. Okay, phases from the mixing matrix, so I can remove them, these phases. Is that clear? Yeah, so I have n phases here and n phases there, but the Lagrangian has to still, I have to leave the freedom to do a total global phase transformation. So I cannot fix all the, in principle, you can think, you can absorb n phases from here, n phases from here, you can absorb it together with the phases of the mixing matrix, but this cannot be done because you need to leave the freedom of the current to be transformed under a global phase transformation. So I can remove all but one of the phases. Okay, so then this means, okay, this is important. This is for Dirac neutrinos. Okay, because for Dirac neutrinos, these global phase transformations leaves not only the part of the interactions unchanged, but also the mass term. You remember the Dirac mass term was m phi bar phi. This Dirac mass term is also invariant under global phase transformations. So I can do this only for Dirac neutrinos. So in the case of Dirac neutrinos with mass given by that, I can remove 2n-1 of the phases. So in the case of Dirac, I will have a reduced number of physical phases Okay, so for Dirac, I take the total number of phases here, n plus 1 over 2, and I remove the ones are not physical. And then I will have n minus 1, n minus 2 over 2 physical phases. This indicates that neutrinos are Dirac, sorry. But what happens if neutrinos are Majorana? And then instead of having this mass term over here, I need to include a Majorana mass term. A Majorana mass term, if you remember, we saw yesterday, has this form. In terms of the mass eigenstates, you remember we were building the right-handed field using charge conjugation. So this would be the form of the Majorana neutrino mass. Then if we do the global phase transformation as we did here, in that case, we see that this is the global phase transformation. We will see that this term transforms as exponential of 2i phi k nu kl. So once I consider a global phase transformation of the neutrino fields, you see that the Majorana mass term is not invariant, okay? Because the phases are not canceling each other. I have this fast here. So the thing is that in that case, I don't have the same freedom I had for Dirac neutrinos. And when I build this weak current, we will see that it will transformate this way. So the thing is that I don't have the freedom to redefine the fields of neutrinos. I cannot absorb phases of the mixing matrix in the definition of the neutrino fields, okay? So then my only freedom relies on the redefinition of the phases of the charged lepton fields, okay? So then my current can be written in this way. Then I will have the phases for the redefinition of the charged current fields. Okay? Because now the Lagrangian is not invariant under the redefinition of the fields of the neutrinos. Then I have here n phases. I can remove those phases because these phases can absorb n phases from the mixing matrix. Okay? So in that case, only n phases are unphysical. Okay? Any question about that? If you have both, then you have a Majorana mass term, you cannot do the redefinition. So if you have a term, a Majorana mass term, then you cannot do that. Okay, so in that case, then we have these n phases that are unphysical, then we will have a total, in the case of Majorana neutrinos, of n and n minus 1 over 2 physical phases. So then you see that in that case, there are more phases than in the case of Dirac neutrinos. And then how we organize this thing? So usually, when you have general mixing matrix, then the summary of all of this is that for a mixing matrix n times n, you will have the mixing angles we have seen there. We have n minus 1 over 2 mixing angles. Then we will have n minus 1, n minus 2 over 2 Dirac phases. And then the rest of phases you cannot remove in the case of Majorana will be Majorana phases. Okay? So with this counting, you can do with we can see here, for instance, in the case of two neutrinos, if you consider only the approximation between two neutrinos, you can do the counting for any 1 and 2, and you will have one mixing angle, and you will have 0 Dirac phases and 1 Majorana phase for two neutrinos. Okay? If you do the same for 3 neutrinos, for n equal to 3, so you will have 3 missing angles, okay? 1 Dirac CP phase, 1 Dirac phase, plus 2 Majorana phases. Okay, so this will be the counting for the mixing matrix. Any question about this? Okay, if not, you can let me know. So then I will skip this because I guess this is clear from the lecture yesterday. So you saw how to calculate the oscillation probability. It was clear for everybody. So one is just to combine production, propagation, and detection. So in production, we need, since we produce flavor neutrinos, because the production processes, detection processes are weak processes, so the states we produce are the eigenstates with given flavor. I produce flavor neutrinos, but I know that the eigenstates of the Hamiltonian of the propagation are the mass eigenstates, so I need to project my flavor neutrinos over the mass neutrinos, because those I know how to propagate from the production to the detection. It's just, we will see now a little bit of details on that. In principle, at first approximation, we just need to add, solving the Rodinger equation, adding an exponential. This you saw yesterday, right? The exponential is that one. And then again, when I arrive to the detector, my detector is not able to see nu1, nu2, and nu3. My detector is only able to see flavor neutrinos. So I need to project again to the flavor basis. Okay, and then combining all the three pieces is what you get, is why you get to this neutrino oscillation probability that you did yesterday. Okay, so we have talked about the mixing angles, but we have not talked about the m-square. So at the end, what you saw is that the oscillation probability, this you saw yesterday, depends on delta m-square. Does not depend on the individual masses, but on the difference of the mass square of the neutrinos. Okay, what are the possibilities for those masses? So in principle, if we have 3 neutrinos, we have 2 different mass differences between 2,1 and 2,3,1, okay? Because the thing is that you may see, oh, I can have the 3,2, but we have a hierarchical values because we know that delta M21, that is the one measured in solar, this is of the order of 7, 10 to the minus 5 electron volt square. And we know that delta M31 or 32 is of the order of 2.5, 10 to the minus 3 electron volt square. So then since there is a factor almost 100 between the two values, then there are only 2 possibilities of 2 delta mass splittings because delta M32 is essentially delta M31 with a very small difference. So then at first approximation, we have 2 different mass splittings, delta M21 and delta L31. Okay, so how can we create the neutrino mass spectrum in depending on these values? So we may have 2 possibilities. We might consider, so here you have, in colors, you have, this will be the mass of nu1, nu2, and nu3, because are the states, we have a mass, I know the mass of them. And in colors, you have the composition in flavor terms of each mass eigenstate. For instance, nu1 here is the one that gets the largest part of nu-e. This is a convention. This is a convention. The convention is that nu1 is the state with the largest part of nu-e and a smaller part of nu2 and nu3. And nu3 is the mass eigenstate with the smaller content of nu3. Okay, so based on that, I can organize the neutrino mass spectrum in these 2 different ways. Okay, why? Because I know from solar experiments, we will see, I've measured that this is positive. I know that the mass of 2 is over the mass of 1. So when I organize the masses, I always have 2 on top of 1, because the mass of 2 is always larger than the mass of 1. Okay? Always 2 on top of 1, because I have measured experimentally this. Now, this value, I've measured the absolute value. Still, we We have indications, but we don't have a determination of the sign. So still, I don't know if 3 is over 1 or if 1 is over 3. So then, since I don't know this sign, I have these two possible orderings, what we call normal ordering, when this mass is positive. So the new 3 is over 1 and 2, and this other possibility inverted where new 3 is below. Okay? These are the possibilities to organize the neutrino mass spectrum. Yes? We will see later in tomorrow. We will see, yes. Okay, so then this is what we have. Okay, I just skipped the oscillation probability. Okay, but yeah, in the formula you have seen yesterday, okay, I don't have here the slide. Let me just share it with you. No, here. Sorry. So in this formula you derived yesterday, I don't know if you realize, but you know how it was calculated, this propagation part? There were some approximations there. The approximations were considering that neutrinos are plane waves, okay? But you know, you have studied quantum mechanics, that in principle, with plane waves, we have problems of location of the wave of the particles, and then the most formal treatment for particles for quantum mechanics is the wave packet treatment. You have seen that, right? So then the thing is that this derivation was kind of simplistic because it was considered this approximation. But the thing is that if you do a formal treatment considering the wave packet, at the end the result is essentially the same, okay? Indeed, when you calculate, let me show you the formulas and I will share it with you because perhaps there will be no time to put everything. Not that one, sorry. Not that one. Too many files. Okay. Okay. Okay, so here we have done this approximation of the plane wave, but in reality, this is very simplistic, just with these terms you derived yesterday, because in practice, one needs to take into account that you need to do some average over the production point of the neutrino and its energy. So this, when you do a more detailed calculation, you need to take into account this, to do an average of this energy and distance, okay? So at the end, the oscillation probability you derived is a bit more complicated, okay? And if you consider, for instance, the wave packet neutrino oscillations, I will not enter into details, but if any of you is interested, I will recommend the book by Carlo Giunti, here, Giunti and Kim, Fundamentals of Neutrino Physics and Astrophysics. It's a fantastic book. You have many things, everything of neutrinos is there. And in particular, this wave packet is very detailed over there. So then the thing is that, okay, we have derived the formula under the plane wave. This is simplistic because this assumes I know very precisely the production point of the neutrino and the energy distribution, and this is not the case. So in the realistic case, I need to do an average, okay? But if you go to the most detailed treatment quantum mechanically of the wave packet, then at the end, you need to add, you have this phase here that you have for the plane waves. So you need to add this phase that comes from the thing that you are using the wave packet. You can remember this from your quantum mechanics course. So then this term there gets a bit more complicated because the arrival time of the neutrino is unknown. So then you need to do an average. And then at the end, the oscillation formula needs to add an extra term in the case of wave packets. Okay? What happens at the end is that if the conditions that happen in most of the experiments everything is correctly behaved. So for instance, the distance traveled by the neutrinos is smaller than the distance to which the coherence between neutrinos is lost, or the uncertainty on the production point of the neutrino is smaller than this oscillation length. At the end, you end up that all this very exact, precise treatment, you end up with the same formula. as for the plane wave. So this is just like a message. We have derived the most simple formula. People can tell you, okay, this is very simplistic, yes. But if you go to the really detailed quantum mechanical treatment, at the end the formula is the same. Okay, is that clear? Okay. Okay, so then see this oscillation probability. So we see the oscillation probability in the two neutrino families. It will take this form here with the mixing angle and the delta m square. And here we can distinguish different regimes, okay, depending on the values of the oscillatory term. Okay, so here you have how to calculate the probability in terms of L over E. So we have the short distance regime where the distance is very, very small, so oscillations still didn't have time to develop. So still, the probability of oscillation, this is almost close to 0. And then you have that there is no sensitivity to oscillations over there. Then as you go for larger values of L over E, you go to the long distance regime where the value of the L over E, of the distance traveled, is optimal in order to see oscillations, because the distance is such that you maximize this term here. So you get to the first maximum, and then you have strong sensitivity to the oscillation probability. So then usually the experiments are designed in order to get the parameters here, to get larger sensitivity on the oscillations. And then once you go to larger distances, at the end this term is oscillating very, very fast. L over E is very large. You have a sinus square oscillating very fast. And at the end, the limited resolution of your experiment does not allow you to reconstruct this very fast oscillation, so you cannot reconstruct from the experiment. And then what it is assuming in that case is that you do a treatment of average oscillations, okay? So these are like the three different regimes for the neutrino oscillations experiments, okay? So this is in vacuum. This is the most general things in vacuum. But what happens in matter? Because at the end, in some of the experiments, oscillations happen in vacuum, but in most of cases, they travel matter. For instance, the neutrinos produced in the core of the sun traverse all the sun, then traverse the vacuum from between the sun and the earth, and then they traverse the earth before to arrive to the detector. So then one needs to consider how this matter can affect the travel of the neutrinos. So then it was realized by Wolfenstein that if we consider the process of charge currents and neutral current that we discussed yesterday, so the standard model interactions of neutrinos with the matter fields, then these processes induce, it happens a coherent forward scattering, okay, that modifies the propagation of the neutrinos in matter. Essentially what happens is that this induces effectively like a refraction index. You can think like with the light when it's passing from one medium to the other, that there is a refraction index change. It's really similar to that. So neutrinos, when changed to a different medium, then this modified how neutrinos, how the mixing, you remember, we have discussed the mixing between flavor neutrinos and mass neutrinos. Okay, this matrix is in vacuum. This matrix is defined in vacuum. It comes from the different models. But once neutrinos go through a medium, this matrix is changed. And what we have, these mixing angles in vacuum, they are modified to some versions in matter. Okay? So, in principle, what is going on is that you can keep the same formula you have for the oscillations here, okay, how we treat the neutrino oscillations in matter. You can take this formula, but then you consider that now your mixing angle theta has changed to a mixing angle in matter, and your delta m square has changed to a delta m square in matter, okay? And then this new mixing angle, this new delta m square will depend on the density of the medium. So then you can see here, you can just explain the oscillation with the same formula, with the modified parameters, and then your mixing angle in matter will depend on the mixing angle in vacuum, and on this parameter A. This parameter A is nothing but the matter effect induced by the neutral current processes of neutrinos and charge current process of neutrinos in the Earth. Okay, and also the mass splitting is modified depending on the value of the matter density. Okay, and the important thing is that there could be a resonance effect. What is a resonance effect? So the thing is that you may have in the vacuum you may have this angle very small. If you have a mixing angle very small, then you cannot expect very strong effect in oscillations because the value of the mixing angle is the one defining the amplitude. The oscillation probability goes like sinus squared to theta. If theta is small, there will be few oscillations. But you can start with a mixing angle small in vacuum, and this mixing angle can be enhanced to a very large value due to the matter effects. And this is what is a resonance. This is the so-called the MSW effect that happens in the sun, and this is what's happening to the higher energy neutrinos, that starting with a small mixing angle will finish with a very large mixing angle, okay? So these formulas I show you there are considering constant matter. Because what we do is that instantaneously I calculate, instead of calculating, doing the rotation, the projection of nu alpha to nu k, that are the eigenstates in vacuum, what I'll do is, if I assume the matter is dense, is constant, I can calculate the projection of the flavor eigenstate to the mass eigenstates in matter. That will be different from the eigenstates in vacuum, okay? And then these formulas are valid in this case of constant matter density. But what happens, as in most of the cases, the density is not constant, as in the sun. In the sun, the density is larger in the center of the sun, and then it goes down. In that case, the situation is a bit more complicated because then you need to take into account this effect. You need to take into account that the density is not constant, and then essentially what you have to do is this process. So numerically, what we do in our calculation is that we have the path. We calculate the path from the neutrinos from the sun to the Earth, and we select very small steps, and at each step, we calculate the mass eigenstates in matter. So we consider a very large number of steps with constant density, okay? This is what usually we do. So in that case, one should be careful because you may have that this process may have, and then may have some impact on the oscillation probability. So it's 5 minutes. Okay, sorry, I was very, because it's up to, sorry, I thought it was, okay, sorry. Sorry, I was in a hurry because I thought it was, I had less time. Okay. Okay, then I was running because I thought it was at 45. Yeah. Okay, so then the thing is that in the case of if we have varying matter, then we need to calculate instantaneously the nu1 m and nu2m, that are the mass eigenstates, instantaneous mass eigenstates in matter. Okay, the good point is that one can calculate how this may impact the oscillation probability in the sun, and then one can establish this thing with some adiabaticity parameter, gamma, and this adiabaticity parameter that tells you how fast the mixing angle in matter varies over the sun. Okay, this parameter depends on the mixing on the mass difference in vacuum, the energy, and the variation of the mixing angle in matter. So these parameters in the sun turns out to be very small. So then, since it is small, the thing is that the calculation of the probability in the sun is not that complicated, and then we can do a lot of approximations. Okay? Okay, so let's see what's going on in the sun. In the sun, then we have, Okay, maybe I go back a little bit because I thought I just was jumping over many things. So where I miss you? Where I miss you? I miss you here? Okay, this it was clear that the Batter effect induces has some impact on the evolution of the neutrinos. Okay, so then here we will have to see how the effect impacts the neutrinos, and to do that, one can calculate the effective potential of neutrinos in the sun. Okay, so this is what we have. We have the Lagrangian with charge current and neutral current, and then we can evaluate how this impact, taking into account the effective Hamiltonian, okay? And then with the Hamiltonian, you have that this the Hamiltonian interaction. You may have that this way using the Fermi theory, okay? Nu alpha, gamma mu, 1 minus gamma 5. So this is the Hamiltonian that explains you how is this interaction of neutrinos in the sun with the electrons, protons, and neutrons. Okay, this is the Hamiltonian I can use to determine how this interaction impact the evolution of the neutrinos. In order to do that, so this is the leptonic charge current, okay, that we have seen before, okay? This is the neutral current. And then I have this term that it's the leptonic current considering the fermions that are in the medium and affect the interaction of the neutrinos. So then I may have usually in the medium electrons, positrons, and neutrons, okay, because we have standard ordinary matter. So I can calculate these terms using electrons, positrons, and neutrons. Okay, so if I consider, then I need to do some assumptions that are valid for the sun, but will not be valid, for instance, in supernova or in other exotic scenarios. I can assume that the medium is non-relativistic. I can assume that the medium is unpolarized. And I can assume that the medium is neutral, so same number of electrons and protons. Okay, under these assumptions, and taking into account this Hamiltonian, I can see that the current that modifies the current in vacuum, so the leptonic current in matter, it will be given by this value, 1/2, the number density of electrons for the coupling of electrons to neutrinos flavor alpha, the coupling of the protons, and the number of neutrons with this coupling of neutrons to protons. So then, you remember the current, the leptonic current I had in vacuum. Now, since I have matter with electrons, protons, and neutrons. This, the interaction, I will have to consider this current. Okay, so this current induces, taking into account the values of the couplings. So you go to the standard model, and then the standard model gives you the values for the couplings between alpha neutrinos and electrons, the vectorial, for alpha neutrinos and protons, alpha neutrinos and neutrons. So you go, you have a table. These couplings depend on the weak mixing angle. So then you consider these values, and then you get that this current essentially can be written like 1/2 the number density of electrons. Sorry, 1/2, no, I have to remove, is the number density of electrons minus 1/2 number density of neutrons, okay? Then the minus 1/2 the number density of neutrons, and minus 1/2 number density of neutrons. So here I'm including for the 3 flavors, E, mu, and tau. So this is for electron neutrinos, for mu neutrinos, and for tau neutrinos. And this, it makes sense, because the thing is that due to the presence of neutrons, protons, and electrons in the medium material, neutrinos experience some processes that in the case of muon neutrinos and tau neutrinos, the important interactions are the neutral current interactions, so that depend on the density of neutrons. There are also neutral current interactions due to interactions with electrons and protons, but they cancel each other. And in the case of neutrinos, I have a term that depends on charge currents with electrons in the term from the term from the neutral current. Okay. So then, this induces effective potential. So how I consider these interactions in my Hamiltonian? If I need to calculate the evolution Hamiltonian of the neutrinos, this current induces an effective potential, okay, in matter that will have this expression, square root of 2GF N1 minus N over 2, 0, 0. So this is the effective potential in matter that affects the propagation of neutrinos, and I need to add this to the Hamiltonian in vacuum in order to consider the matter effect on the neutrinos. Okay? This is how the presence of interactions with protons, neutrons, and electrons affects the propagation of neutrinos in the sun, for instance. Okay? In the case of antineutrinos, I need to change the sign of the potential. Okay, as I was telling you, with this potential, what I can do is I can calculate the evolution. I have my Hamiltonian in vacuum, and then my Hamiltonian in vacuum, I can add this effective potential. And with these two terms, then I can calculate the mixing angle in matter and the delta m square in matter. That is the expressions I show you here. Okay, where this A there depends on this potential, essentially. This A is the matter term that goes with 2 energy potential over delta m square. Okay, I know it was a bit chaotic. I hope you got some of the point. Okay, so the thing is that due to the fact that having neutrinos propagating in matter, what I had in vacuum, that I have theta and delta m are modified, and in matter I have different values for the mixing angle and for the mass. Okay? And then I was telling you this is very important because starting from a very small mixing angle in vacuum, if the conditions are properly accomplished, then I can have a very strong mixing angle in matter. That is what happens for the sun. Okay, so I will skip this thing of the barimatter. I told you that this reasoning here is the simplification once I consider constant matter density, so constant number of electrons in neutrons, but if the number of electrons and protons is varying with the propagation of the neutrino, with the path of the neutrino, then one needs to take more care and then calculating this process in infinitesimal steps. Okay, so then going to the sun, what's going on in the sun? Okay. So just to derive the formula, oscillation formula on the sun, we can consider just to derive approximately the oscillation formula for neutrinos in the sun, I can consider that at the beginning I have at the sun electron neutrinos produced. But those electron neutrinos are an admixture of the mixing angles in the matter in the center of the sun. So then I can write them in terms of this mixing angle in matter. Okay? So these nu1m and nu2m are the mass eigenstates in matter, in the core of the sun. Okay? So this is what we have at the center of the sun. Then at the Earth, I measure the probability that a nu E produced at the sun arrives as a nu E at the Earth. Okay? In that case, I need to consider, for instance, the probability of the electron neutrino in the production is the projection over nu1, and then at the detector, again, I need to project the state 1 in the detector. Since I detect only flavor again state, I need to project back to the flavor again base. And the same considering I'm doing in the two neutrino approximation. Okay? So then I need to consider the projection of electron neutrino in the sun over the Einstein 2, and then at the detector I need to project back from the state 2 to the flavor electron. Is that okay? Okay, then here one should be careful because the projection is done in the core of the sun, and then the mixing angle that relates the two bases is the mixing angle in matter. While this first approximation is at the detector, I can consider vacuum. In order to do it properly, I need to consider the density at Earth, but it's much smaller compared to the density at the sun. So then here, I need to consider mixing angle in matter, and here I need to consider mixing angle in vacuum. So if you do this projection, you will get that this probability will be given by cosinus 2 theta in matter, cosinus square theta in vacuum, plus sinus square theta m sinus square theta. So this will be the approximate probability for the neutrino survival probability in the sun. Okay? So then, considering the different energies that happen in the sun here, so this is, you have the formula there. So then, if you remember, we may have some enhancement of the mixing angle according to the formula we have seen. So for neutrinos with energy below 2 mega electron volts, so below here, so the resonance is here. The resonance is where the mixing angle is enhanced. So for neutrinos with lower energy, then the mixing angle in matter coincides with the mixing angle in vacuum. So in that case, theta m is equal to theta. So for these low energy neutrinos, I consider theta m equal to theta, and then this formula results in this one here. That is essentially the formula for the neutrino oscillations in vacuum with the oscillation frequency averaged. Okay? While if I consider neutrinos with energies above mega electron volts, in that case, the matter effect of the neutrinos in the sun is important. With the matter effect is the same. But since the energy is different, the comparison between the density of the sun and the energy of the neutrinos here is more important, so then matter effects are important here, and then as a result you have a resonance, and then the mixing angle in matter is pi over 2, irrespective of the value of the mixing angle in vacuum. So then in that case, the probability is sinus squared to theta. So we have that this formula that corresponds to all the different energies takes different values if you consider low energy neutrinos or you consider high energy solar neutrinos. So in one case, you have essentially vacuum oscillations, and in other case, you have strong matter effect and sinus squared theta. This is why when I was discussing at the beginning the solar neutrino problem, you saw that different experiments were seeing different deficit. One was saying 30%, other was saying 40%, other was saying 50%. So this has mainly two reasons. We have already seen that some of the experiments are sensitive to different flavors. The radiochemical measure only nu E, while the water Cherenkov or of the heavy water detect nu E, nu mu, and nu tau. But also, they are sensitive to different parts of the solar neutrino spectrum. For instance, the gallium experiment is sensitive to the lowest energetic neutrinos, to the so-called PP neutrinos. For these energy neutrinos, for this lower part, so the probability is larger. So this is why in gallium experiments, the deficit was 50%. While in the chlorine experiment, that was sensitive mostly to the high energy part, they were saying 30% deficit. So this depends on the flavor detected, but also on the energy. So low energy solar neutrinos have this survival probability, close above 50%, while high energy solar neutrinos have the probability of sinus squared theta. So then this matter effect is crucial to understand the different results observed at the experiments. This can be only understood in terms of the matter effect of the matter potential, the effective potential that induce the electrons and neutrons and protons of the sun and the earth on the neutrinos. Okay? So then I was focusing on the matter effect in the sun, but of course in the earth there will be matter effect as well. But the density is smaller. But then you may have that neutrinos, once arrive to the earth and they travel part of the earth up to the detector, they will experience also the matter effect. And indeed, this interaction with the earth induced a difference in the number of neutrinos that arrive during the day and the number of neutrinos that arrive during the night. Because the neutrinos that arrive during the day just come from the sun to the detector. Perhaps they cross a small part of the density of the Earth, but very small and negligible. But neutrinos that arrive during the night, they traverse the whole Earth. So then they experience longer matter effect. And then this induces a difference in the neutrinos in one sense of the other. The difference is very small, it's of the order of 1%, 3%, but you can see that the theory of neutrino oscillations and matter effects can explain this asymmetry between the probability of neutrinos in night and in day. Okay, so these matter effects, I was focusing most of the time on solar neutrinos, but of course these affect atmospheric neutrinos. Okay, in the case of atmospheric neutrinos, you may have seen here that you have the detector, neutrinos coming from different radius, from different directions, and in that case, the matter effect is not the same for the neutrinos that just traverse the upper mantle and lower mantle, or the neutrinos that are coming just from below and traverse the mantle, but also the outer core and the inner core. So then in atmospheric neutrinos, the experiments can also feel the difference, the effect of this effective potential on the number of neutrinos observed. Okay, and then, just let me, so I will finish with that one. So here is what you see actually at the experiments, at the atmospheric neutrino experiments. So in the atmospheric neutrino experiments, one usually measures, we will see this tomorrow in more detail, the number of neutrinos arrive, we measure the energy and also the zenith angle, that is essentially the direction of arrival. So essentially the number of, the distance that neutrinos have traveled inside the Earth. And then we can see that in some cases, in that case, here, these bubbles here correspond to the matter interactions with the Earth, okay? Because there is a resonance. The resonance I was explaining to you in the sun that happens at 2 MeV, more or less, that differentiates neutrinos below and above. In the case of atmospheric neutrinos, for neutrinos around 3-4 GeV, neutrinos experience a resonance, and then there is here will be the calculations essentially without matter effects, and this is the calculation with matter effects, and you will have this resonance over there. And then, since I have told you that the potential, the sign of the potential changes for neutrinos and antineutrinos, okay, so the effect will be different for neutrinos and antineutrinos depending on the sign of the delta M square. We will see this in more detail tomorrow. Okay, so I stop here. I'm sorry for the last part. I hope you got some of the information. If not, tomorrow you can come to our offices and we can discuss. Thank you.